This is the Truth Network.
Hidden treasures of the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. So I am thinking that perhaps today's verse, the 6th verse in the 7th chapter, could be the climax, really, to the entire story in the Song of Solomon. But nonetheless, it is spectacular, and it no doubt is the Vav verse, which has to do with delight, and it very much is delightful. It also has to do with the fear of the Lord. All these things fit into this 6th verse in the 7th chapter, which we'll just go ahead and read. It says, "How fair and how pleasant art thou, O love, for delights." I love what Matthew Henry, I really, really do love what Matthew Henry talks about, in that word pleasant is actually a word that is like saying that this has been put on. In other words, that there's a way that this was bestowed, the pleasantness of it, which, is kind of like jewelry on a woman, that she would be decked out. And so this idea of pleasant is something that Jesus gave us. It's a light that he gave us, and it very much has to do with the presence of, to be fully present and showing the light with which we reflect Jesus. That is the idea of how pleasant. And I do love very much what Matthew Henry says about that. And Rashi is saying that this is the big moment for the delight of the love that the two have. And then, I would just comment about the faith that's involved in this, because, again, that letter nun is very prominent in both the idea of how pleasant art thou, and then there's also in the idea of delights, that there is this faith that goes back. And so I almost have a sense, and since that last word is sort of a Solomon word that you usually just find that Solomon made it, that's like a very much a male noun that has to do with his faith. So as a result of our great faith that we've been talking about in the last several verses, we now see he responds with his great faith in us. And that therein is the delights. That word is very much plural in Hebrew. And so it's not just one delight, it is delights. And so the idea is that it's a really miraculous thing that, Jesus delights. In other words, because of our faith in him, he has tremendous faith in us. And when you think about that, that even results in both, in regular marriage, in children. In other words, because you have your great faith in your wife and her great faith in you, you're then entrusted with children. And the idea is we have been entrusted with Jesus' children as a result of these delights. In other words, that's how much faith that he has in you, is that he is wanting to bear children with you, okay? Because he knows how faithful you are. And isn't that spectacular that you have these moments that he entrusts his children with you? And so I can't help but note that's just the spectacular thing to me, is that, oh my goodness, you mean that Jesus has so much faith in me that he entrusts me with his children? And yes, that's the most delight of delights, right? One time I had this absolute delight of baptizing a young man that had come to a couple of boot camps, as we're getting ready actually for a boot camp this week. Actually, I get to go tomorrow and the next day to this boot camp. But last time we had this boot camp, I got a chance to baptize somebody for the first time. And like, what a spectacular thing. And I got to tell you that the young man's father was there. And there's a movie that we're going to show at this boot camp of that baptism. And if you can see the hug of that father and son, you get an idea of what I'm talking about. The delight that was between the two as he was born again. And we all get a chance to take part in God's children. The delight that's involved in that, and the delights after delights after delights, as we get a chance to see more and more of his children. And that's no doubt all that love bears fruit, okay? It just does. And so the other thing I would like to note about this verse that I saved for the end, because I think it's part of the reason I believe that it is the climax of the verse. the climax of the whole Song of Solomon, this is the only time that the king / Solomon here uses the word love to describe his bride. The hab love, not the same word that is used, you will love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. That love, the rest of the time he refers to us with the daled vav daled love, which has to do with the servant love. But here, when he says, how fair and how pleasant is thy love, he's talking about the hahab love, that love that we have, that would be comparable to agape love you may have heard in the Greek, but it's so much richer than that, because ahava love is the Father himself expressed and the Son expressed. In other words, the heart of the Father is love and the heart of the Son is love, and when you put them together, you got a whole lot of love, okay? And here he is describing us as that, right? He's saying, how fair is thou love? In other words, he's describing his bride as love. Right? And so, therein lies what happens, right? As a result of all the light that he gives us, we get to fall madly in love with him, and then we get a chance to bear fruits, and that is nothing but pure delight. Again, the only place that you'll find in the Song of Solomon where Solomon describes us in that way, using that word ahava, and just absolutely spectacular in my world. And I hope that it's spectacular in yours as you think about loving him with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. And in doing so, you get kids, and kids in Christ. That's delightsome.